This big world we live in today,
is very small.
students today are immersed in information and faced with issues
Way beyond life in the neighborhood or what's in their textbooks.
My son tells me he goes from space to serial killers.
Information around the world,
The pandemic,
Cases rising,
COVID, lockdowns.
what they see, hear, feel, and experience.
afraid of what's going to happen to SPM.
Presidential elections, the Black Lives Matter thing was quite a big thing.
Are more than just pixels on a screen or words on the whiteboard.
We have to explain to them what COVID is.
The environment, politics.
and why certain people say or act certain ways.
It's a world where yesterday's news,
Is today's reality on a local and global scale.
the effects of this extremely interconnected world leaves room for constant change, uncertainty, ambiguity, and sometimes even chaos.
Actually, everything is changing so fast these days that it's hard to catch up.
How can we better prepare students to engage and thrive in today's ever-changing world, to lead in the uncertainty, and to make a difference? Welcome to Leaps of Knowledge, the Heart series. This series is based on 5 core values. Here to make a difference, enjoy what you do and who you do it with, act with integrity, reach for perfection, and think ahead and out of the box.
Having these values to live by is so important. It remains at the core of who we are, even in this radically changing world we live in today. In this series, we'll be tackling big, key questions in education against the backdrop of today's world through our heart for education.
In this episode, we explore our first value, here to make a difference.
Throughout history, the purpose of education has taken many forms, from religious teachings to preparing society for an industrialized workforce. Education further evolved in the late 20th century, making way for innovation and creativity as we welcomed the digital revolution. The philosopher John Dewey sums it up beautifully when he said, "An education is, in its forms and methods, an outgrowth of the needs of the society in which it exists."
Fast forward to where we are today, a world that is full of endless possibilities, which comes with a measure of uncertainty and change. We ask ourselves, is our education preparing students to engage and thrive in today's globally connected and ever-changing world? What should education look like now? More than that, how can education empower young people to realize that they can lead in this uncertainty and they can make a difference?
Well, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, has developed a framework just for this. It's called the Global Competency Framework. Global competency isn't just a nice idea. In the world of education, many people look to PISA, the OECD's Program for International Student Assessment, as the benchmark for assessing how well a country's education is doing against the rest of the world. In 2018, the OECD introduced a new PISA assessment on global competency to assess the capacity of students to live in an interconnected world. We reached out to Andreas Schleicher, Director for Education and Skills and Special Advisor on Education Policy to the Secretary General from the OECD, to understand this further.
This idea of global competency changes every day. I think the knowledge part are perhaps the most stable one. You know, if you drink a cup of coffee in Tokyo, do you understand this could have implications for the life and work of people in Brazil on a coffee plantation? I think that knowledge and understanding of interconnections, the idea of climate change, our collective behavior, we are the system, we are the future. What we do today will matter for tomorrow. I think that knowledge part is probably the most stable one. But the social and emotional part is changing every day. Now, I think the way, as the world advances, I think being globally competent means to be connected with people who are different from us, and to be able to think across problems from different lenses, different disciplinary lenses, different social lenses. That idea of empathy, not just for at the individual level, but also at the societal level. The world is no longer black and white. Often we need to navigate ambiguity, manage uncertainty, and not lose our foundation when sort of the future is unclear. Again, those are very, very fundamental capabilities to thrive and live in a world that is complex, that's ambiguous, that's volatile.
If nothing is set in stone anymore, the idea is to be able to work with what you have and make sense of this constantly unpredictable environment we live in.
Yes, and understanding that being globally competent also means to have an understanding of interconnections. We need to learn how to learn. So, what are we doing today?
We are going to make Dalgona coffee. So it's pretty easy. One, well, that's a lot of coffee. Two,
Okay.
and the sugar. Yeah.
Okay.
Just 2 tablespoons sugar.
That's a lot of sugar. That's a lot of sugar.
I think tablespoons of olive oil as well.
Only 2
Maybe a bit
tablespoons.
more. Try that. Okay. And then you literally just whisk it.
Okay.
Whisk it. Whisk it. Whisk it.
2020 was an interesting year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it sure was. It pushed educators around the world to pause and reflect on education as it stands today, and how it might need to be for the near future.
The effects of the pandemic were tough for so many to go through, but it also allowed certain realizations and conversations to surface.
So when COVID-19 started, I found it difficult to concentrate in online classes due to all the distractions at home.
I learn on television, but I cannot understand well because I cannot ask questions through the television.
I think the thing I found most hardest was balancing school with being with my mental well-being. So I tended to have either really productive days or really happy days, but they didn't really go together.
They were very fearful of going out. So even when we had the lockdown restrictions being lifted, a lot of our students did not want to go out because they were scared that they might contract the disease.
A lot of them were at home, and most of them like to go to school and to be with their friends.
To be prepared to go global, students need to have confidence in themselves, to talk about what they are feeling, what they really want to learn, to be creative and be good communicators.
And I think it's reinforcing the idea about global citizenship, what it actually means. So it's therefore having empathy for others, understanding about others, about issues around the world that may or may not affect them directly, but are still important.
I want them to be able to have conversations with people and have strong emotional IQ and good interaction, social interactions, and all that can be hampered by the use of technology.
This world that they live in now is so super competitive, and that it is going to be very difficult for them to be able to stand out from the crowd and succeed because it's just hyper intensified in every single way.
But I feel that the greatest threat comes from climate change. It's clear it's going to exacerbate social injustice. It's going to sharpen the divide between communities. I fear that it's going to lead to a further rise of populism and intolerance.
The questions we have to ask ourselves, the courage we have to demonstrate as adults, as parents, as children, is what the world needs. Not just to repair anything, but to prepare our children for the greater good.
We've been pushed into doing things differently, and we have learned so much. And now is the time, more than ever, to push conversations of rebuilding back better.
Yes, and with the chaos comes opportunity. I mean, just look at today's generation. Many of them are so well informed and so resourceful. I think to see more of that potential come to pass, we need to approach education in a way that makes learning more engaging by incorporating creativity, technology, and real-world issues in real time. And in doing so, help them become globally competent.
Ensuring that education is delivered according to the need of the times is one thing. But what is that need? The need is to raise a generation of students that can lead in the chaos, that can think big and think beyond themselves. I think there are kids who really want to make a difference if they were just given the chance.
We could bring more awareness to climate change through art mediums. Social media is really big, right? So we can post art talking about climate change.
I wanted to make things that are available for older students in my school, like visits to refugees and understanding how other people live who are less fortunate, more available to younger students, because you only get that at my age, possibly older in my school.
My community, I'll help them plant crops on their backyard garden and educate them how to plant and take care of it. And I'll let them stop food waste.
In 2018, my team and I had the chance to visit Riverside School in Ahmedabad in India, founded by an incredible woman, Kiran Berasethi, who is also the founder of Design for Change. It's a remarkable school. I've never seen anything like it before. What I loved most about the school is how students are being taught to engage in real-world problems and use design thinking as a way to solve these problems. Embedded directly in the curriculum is the opportunity to design ideas that can make a difference. Whether you're learning maths, or physics, or English, students are taught to have an I can mindset towards any challenge that comes their way, and this better prepares them to engage in today's world.
And to ensure that this I can mindset was not left to chance, we created a very simple 4-step formula to unleash this potential and student agency. We called it FIDS for Kids: Feel, Imagine, Do, and Share. And I'd like to show you a small little example of seeing FIDS in action. What you will see is my 5-year-olds. They observed the school gardener, stroke handyman, stroke carpenter, stroke plumber, running around back and forth to get his tools to get the job done. And then they decided that they have to make his life easier. So in this journey of designing a solution, they were of course learning problem solving, creative thinking, collaboration. But the one lesson they were teaching all of us is that age has nothing to do with competency.
The problem was that Sunil Bhai, he likes to do a lot of work, but then he had to run back and forth. Sunil Bhai had to go everywhere.
Then we said, what do we do after we understand? We imagine a preferred scenario. There is the imagine.
We hear each other's ideas so that we can come up with better solutions. First of all, Earth had got the idea that we can make a belt. We were making a jacket. We thought we will make lots of pockets.
And then you go out and do the action.
We illustrated first how the belt will look. We first cut the sleeve. We stitched, then we cut. Then we stick only on 3 sides, and so it became a pocket.
And then you share it. I think one of the key things that we've learned is we were not sharing. We were just not sharing enough in education.
We talked about with him that why we made this for him, how it will be useful for him. We were telling that he cannot waste his time and his energy. He was feeling happy because now he didn't have to run all over the place to find the keys. He just had to take it out from his pocket and give it to the person who wants it.
To have our children have creative confidence is probably the greatest gift you can give them.
I'm really glad that you experienced that at Riverside. The idea that it's a systems approach and not just a good co-curricular way to think about a mindset. So I think at Riverside, what we did was we really kind of flipped the entire narrative, and it comes from the whole idea of what if and why not. The questioning the status quo. And I think it came from a very personal experience of my own son. Right, a school system that rewards compliance over conversation, that rewards conformity over action. And coming from a design background, I think both of them kind of sort of overlapped. As a mother, the promise for a child, and as a designer, the opportunity for change. And both of these came together to kind of have, in many ways, the child lead the narrative. So again, it's a throwback to my education and design. The idea that it's a user-centered model. And you have to understand that the child has always been incidental to the design of all education models. We've always designed for children, not with them. We've always thought 3 great filters we have put whenever we've seen children. We've looked at age. Oh, you're too young now. What will you know? Not now. When you're later, when you're old. And then we look at the filter of gender. Or for girls and boys. And in some parts of the world, it's really, really a massive divide. And the third filter we always look at is children with demographics. Where you come from will determine what resources you will have and how you will move in life. Moment we remove these 3 filters from the way we understood this partnership between the learner and the program, everything just made sense. Suddenly, the child was telling us what needed to be done for them to find purpose. And then therefore passion, and therefore, the idea of empowerment. I mean, I don't even see it as a question of co-curricular. It became the core curricular. And I would like to use that word as the CORE rather than co-curricular. It was it. It was just simply this. If you're here on the planet, please make sure that you make choices that make the world a better place. Period. End of story. And we created these processes eventually that became part of the culture. And I keep saying cultures will change mindset, not just independent workshops or a club or a co-curricular activity. It has to be cultures. It has to be shared values lived out every single day. Only then children will realize that this is what we're here for, or everybody. So let me give you a small example of, say, the audio tour. My 7-year-olds are given a client project from the municipality of the city I come from. So that's really what I'm trying to say. We're blurring the boundaries between school and life and saying, these are not good projects to do at school. I keep saying making children good at school is the worst reason to run a school. I mean, it's life. So 7-year-olds had visited the zoo a new reptile section had opened up in the zoo, and they realized that there was no guide to take them around. And they kind of, they went to the municipal corporation and said, we are going to make an audio tour for the reptile section. And he just thought it was such a great idea. Of course, and it's that set out the children to do the language part and the MP3 player that they had to buy. So the math part came into the idea of how much to earn. Then they looked at skills in terms of iteration. So they made one, they walked around, they said, no, this is too long, this is too short. Then they understand the user, that the user came from multiple languages. So they had to make sure that they had the audio tour in English, in Gujarati, and in Hindi. And this was a whole month and a half. But at the end of it, everything that you would have otherwise taught them sitting in the class, they learned through a real project. To being able to then eventually launch it. Oh, it was a big fanfare. There was press and there was all of that. Again, that accomplishment gave them empowerment to recognize, yeah, this matters. This is important. So if you eliminate the word hobby or co-curricular, you suddenly are giving the same weightage to skills, purpose, and passion, right? That's really how you need to live out that promise to our children.
On the other side of the globe, we speak to Darcy Lunn, who advocates the concept of educating students as global citizens and making this idea of global citizenship a social norm. Darcy has spoken in more than 90 countries about teaspoons of change. It's a concept he created. A teaspoon of change is a small but significant idea, or an attitude and actions that have a positive impact on people and the planet. It aligns with the United Nations 17 global goals for sustainable development that aim towards ending extreme poverty, reducing inequality, and protecting our planet. Darcy lives and works out of a tiny sustainable house in Australia, but on a daily basis works with the Dulwich Group of Schools based in China and connects with organizations around the world, helping them adopt teaspoons of change.
Yeah, so for me, a global citizen is just knowing that our actions are connected to impacts. And what we do with that is up to us. But I always say, turning off a light switch won't save the world because the electricity you save, it's good, it's useful. But the fact you have a connection to your actions, that's significant. So turning off a light shows that you care about the energy that's consumed there, and you have an attitude, behavior, and habits around trying to reduce your impact in the world. So in 2012, I started to work a little bit in polio eradication. And the story of polio eradication is really remarkable. We've almost eradicated only the second human disease in history after smallpox, essentially with 2 drops. And so the way that we help stop polio eradication is 2 drops of vaccine to every child in the world. And of course, every day there are more children being born. So it's an ongoing process. But having worked in polio eradication, I knew that our small actions made a difference. And so after finishing some work with UNICEF and the Gates Foundation and WHO, in 2014, I decided to go for a walk. And so I walked 1,000 kilometers in Japan to think about what are the small actions that we do that have a positive impact. And whilst I was on that walk, I had a lot of time to think when you walk 1,000 kilometers. And that's where the concept of teaspoons of change started, was looking at what are the small personal choices, decisions, and actions that we can take that have a positive impact. And not that our one small action is going to save the world, but knowing that our actions have impacts, and we can try and do as many good actions as often as possible without trying to be perfect or without trying to save the world by ourselves. So Teaspoons of Change isn't a program. It isn't telling people what to do. It's about trying to understand our small actions combined together creates big change. And so I've seen lots of wonderful examples of that from many different places. I've seen the students at UNIS in Hanoi, where they have an SDG Guardian group, and those guardians go around the school and try and find opportunities of where they can make little positive changes in their school. And one thing they found was that their older students in their school were ordering in food with lots of plastic. And so the Year 3 students went and spoke to the Year 12s and said, hey, in our classroom, we're pretty much plastic free, and we love these SDGs. So we would love it if the older students weren't ordering in so much of the plastic. And at first the Year 12 students kind of laughed at them and thought, oh, these Year 3s. But then other students in Year 12, they said, yeah, we agree with the Year 3s. We should be more conscious in our choices. And so the Year 12 students themselves decided to ban the ordering in of anything that came in plastic packaging. We've got Greta, we've got David Attenborough, we've got lots of, examples in the world. Melati and Isabel from Green School in Bali, who banned plastic bags from the island of Bali. There's so many wonderful examples that we're now not just the crazy people in the room saying, hey, let's try and do something positive for the world. It's becoming a much more mainstream and recognized thing.
Yes, it's about time that making a difference becomes a mainstream thing. But what about schools who have yet to implement this kind of thinking? Are there limitations that we need to better understand?
The internet, video conferencing and cheap flights have made the world increasingly small and interconnected. Children nowadays think nothing of speaking to people from different countries on online games, different continents even, and it changes their perception of the world. They're used to dealing with people from different cultures. The problem is that too many children don't get these kind of experiences, and it puts them at a genuine disadvantage.
I think the challenge for schools, but particularly for students, is to ensure that they're getting life-worthy learning. And so I feel that the challenge for young people is to have learning that is meaningful, that is worthwhile, and that does make a difference in the world.
Yeah, we shouldn't look at mathematics and science and global competencies as opposing ends on a big spectrum. They are there's a fair amount of orthogonality. Now, you can teach to become a global citizen in the field of mathematics. You can teach that in the field of language, in the field of science. In fact, that's how we should be looking at this. But it demands a lot from teachers. I will not deny that. It's much easier to teach mathematical or scientific content than to help people to think like a mathematician, scientist, in a way that is socially responsible.
Yeah, I think any school that doesn't have global citizenship as a pillar of their education is going to look a bit silly. I think the demand from our society, and certainly from our students, is that they can engage with challenges, but also work towards solutions. We want students to feel good about themselves and feel good about the world, and to go and play an active role in that world. Not everyone has to go off and work for UNICEF or for the UN, but they can make a positive impact no matter what they choose to do in the future.
What we've done with children so far. No, all that is great. That's becoming good human being. Okay, all fine. Do your math, science, and English. And now suddenly, even though we put them on the same weightage and say, no, they are equally important, possibly if not more. So I keep saying the irony is we'll have 5 subjects of math every single day of the week. But for character and values, we limit it to once a week. Within that itself, we're not going to make much change. So we'll have to completely shift and really be brave.
We have also, the latest PISA assessment on global competencies. It's quite remarkable that some of the most resilient students are ones from the most disadvantaged families. They have actually been able to, chart their own future. They understand, what it means to, navigate in a complex, difficult situation. And I think for the future, they will probably be better prepared than students, who had everything, scripted for them and just followed, a practice.
So it's really important to be given or to give children the opportunity to interact, to engage and to speak to people from different countries, from different cultures, from as early an age as possible and as often as possible. Frog Connected Classrooms are providing children with a learning experience that stretches beyond geographical boundaries.
So at Dulwich, we have a slogan there, which is graduate worldwide. And it's a lovely term of phrase because we do want our young people to learn all the things they need to learn for the future, but we want them to finish their schooling so they can go out and be a part of the solution and not just a part of the pollution.
A few moments later.
Okay, so tablespoons of this.
Yeah, I think I could do better than this.
Whisk. This is so difficult. I think I need help.
Here, I think this can help. We all need help. Designing the curriculum and classroom environment to prepare students to thrive in today's world is definitely a step forward in the right direction. But the next question we need to ask is, are teachers and parents really prepared to deliver education in this way? And how can we support them?
Actually, it's a balancing act. Sometimes we need to take care of the students, and sometimes we need to take care of the teachers. Because not every teacher is ready for this technology, and they may be facing family problems as well. We need to balance and improve our education in the future.
Peer sharing is the most effective for teachers. When I go to a seminar or workshop and the officers talk about pedagogy, teachers will say, it's okay, you don't teach in the classroom, so you won't know. But when another teacher shares their best practices, they can understand because they are speaking in the same language. I think no one has all the answer, but teachers can also learn how to learn.
You want your teacher to be not just a great instructor, you want them to be also a good coach, a good mentor, a good facilitator, a good evaluator, a designer of innovative learning practice. Those expectations have become very high, but at the very same time, I think they have also brought teaching back to its original mission, to develop people, to help young people become part of society rather than just teaching a subject.
Well, how can teachers be equipped to deliver on a curriculum that empowers? I think a lot of it cannot happen within the teachers' belief systems. I keep saying that while we can teach skills quite well, our mindset and our belief systems have to match up to the 21st century skills. You can't have 21st century skills with the 20th century mindset, right? And that mindset often comes in the way of how we work with our children and ourselves, our own self-awareness, right? So a lot of work at Riverside is done with that, the idea of reflection, the idea of self-awareness. Where are my challenges and where are I call them, where are my bridges and where are my barriers? I have a barrier to say, no, my faith doesn't allow it. Or is it a barrier of age or demographics or science and math? Boys can learn science and girls cannot. That constant internal barriers that we don't even know where we get that from. And it's often from what we have seen as a worldview, right? What we've experienced. So till you don't do enough work in a school system, in your professional development, in your personal development on those barriers that we, unbeknownst to us, harbor, then whilst you might be able to give skills and teach skills to a teacher that can teach it to a child, you want to be able to shift the mindset and belief system. But having said that, I think it takes you 365 days of personal professional development, not 5 days, not 10 days, not 20 days that most schools set out. That's again the box. Oh, we have 5 days of professional development, or we have 10 days of professional development, or maximum 30 days. You can't do this. You can't change mindsets with just days. So you have to do it on a daily basis. So Riverside's newest kind of venture is not newest. I mean, it's just more formalized right now. The Riverside Learning Center, which essentially helps schools either deepen or think about impact in a very different way on this whole idea of a humane approach. And so all our processes are in a systems approach. So we offer leadership, a way to look at their spaces as systems and as cultures. So that's really been super exciting. I keep saying we are not the best school in the world. We want to be the best school for the world.
We've talked a lot about how teachers can support one another to teach students how to think for themselves, build resilience, and have the skills needed for today's uncertain world, social skills.
Where does the role of the parent come in education?
I think it actually is a parent's job to teach the children kindness and resilience, because I do think that I made a conscious decision when the kids were born that I would raise them. I wouldn't outsource the teaching of these values to any other third party. It's my job. It's me and my husband's job to do.
If we can have those kind of conversations on a regular basis, I think it becomes very natural for our kids to actually talk to us. And then slowly, through the conversations, we are able to bring forth the values that we feel are important to us, as parents, and then that's how we can instill that into our kids as well.
I think conversations that parents and teachers definitely need to have is
support. There needs to be supportive conversations. And one thing that was highly successful for us was making sure that parents were equipped and understanding individual circumstances.
They say it takes a village to raise a child, and I think that's super true. So it's really important that the school is involved and that the parents work alongside the school and support the school as well.
Yeah, parents have the central role in education. I can give you an example from our PISA assessment. The simple fact where the parents ask their children every day, how was school, had a greater influence than parental income on the success of their children in school. And unfortunately, the last 10, 15 years have taken us a bit away from that. We have seen a trend towards a kind of commodification of education. Children became consumers of learning content. Parents became clients. Teachers became service providers. Everybody's sort of just expecting something. Learning became a kind of transactional experience. But actually, the heart of learning is a social, it's a relational experience. It's a whole of society project. And if parents are not an integral part of this, and parents do not feel to be part of the educational experience of their children, education will not succeed. And that's something that many education systems need to take more to heart. So in a way, I think we should see as parents more as part of the solution and not just as a client and consumer.
Parents play a significant role in the education experience of a child. However, due to multiple responsibilities they have in the family, it can be challenging for parents to be more involved in education. I often wonder how teachers and parents can work together more. Is there more support that the education system could be giving to parents? Karen, what are some of the challenges you feel parents face when being more involved in the education of their child?
From my conversations with parents, I think most of them experience very similar challenges, especially now during the lockdown. Many parents are still working. With schools closed, parents have to make sure that their children continue to learn from home. Some of them having to play the role of the teacher or just to assist their kids while they do their online lessons. But I can see that parents are all trying their very best as much as they can to get involved in the kids' education.
Wow, with all the pressures that parents face, what are some of the things that schools can do to support them?
I think schools can best support parents by having a good relationship with them. I'll take Kinditi for example. It's a preschool, so because our kids are still in their early childhood years, many of our parents are new parents. I think it's only natural for them to want to make sure that their kids are safe and learning happily in school. With that understanding, we make the element of relationship the main focus for us in education. Our aim then is to make sure that everything that we do is to nurture this relationship with parents, to build trust right from the beginning.
Yeah, building a relationship first is so important. What about education itself? How can teachers involve parents in the whole process, and why do you think that's important?
For Kinditi, parents are an integral part of our ecosystem. An example of how we include the parents will be a congenial. It's an icebreaker that we do at the start of our parents' orientation. So during the first week for the kids and even some parents, they can feel anxious about the whole experience. So the Congenial and the Parent Orientation Program is planned in a way to help parents move from a state of anxiety to anticipation. Yeah. It's really important for us that we continue to build this relationship, making each interaction as meaningful as we can. I also host regular Coffee with Karen days where I get to catch up with parents individually over an informal session. My first question is always about them. How are they doing? Not about their child.
So Karen, what do you feel are the most important skills for kids today?
My answer to that would be empathy and kindness. If you start everything and anything with empathy and kindness, you cannot go wrong. When you naturally have a mindset that wants to lift up another person and your students can pick up the attitude from you. We'll be able to see small and even big changes happen organically in the community and beyond.
Many moments later.
Very messy.
I think you're done.
Yeah?
You got it. Yeah?
Yeah? Well, what I've learned is that having a great relationship with each other is so important. You get a lot further than when you try to do things alone. Parents do need support, especially when it comes to juggling parenting and working from home at the same time. With the lockdown, parents needed to be more involved in supporting their kids with learning. After all, that's how we ended up working together on Learn From Home, right?
Yeah. Learn from home. Gosh, what a mad rush that was to get the whole curriculum online. But seeing how useful the kids and parents found it made it all worth it.
When the country went into national lockdown on the 18th of March 2020, we at YTL Foundation were really concerned about how education would be affected. With all schools closed, it was obvious that learning needed to go online. However, whilst this may be an obvious solution to us, we also guessed that many parents would not have data and the devices to enable this to happen at home. So we quickly put out a survey and we asked parents what were their greatest concerns at this time? What were their greatest needs during lockdown? And we found that parents came back and said that their greatest concern and worry was making sure that their children's education continued uninterrupted. They were also worried about having sufficient content online, even though they were prepared to have online lessons. Half of them said they didn't have enough data and would need extra data for online learning. And families from the lower income group would not be able to afford devices for their children. But at YTL Foundation, we're lucky that over the years, we've worked with many great partners. And so we approached YTL Communications and asked them to provide free SIM cards with free mobile data. And with this, we could give them out to school children in government schools all across the country. We also gave free mobile phones with data to families in the lower income group. Having at least data and devices meant that if schools were able to take lessons online, these children would be able to join in. And if not, their parents would have the ability at least to go and search online for the free learning resources available. And at the same time, we work with Frog Asia, who has an amazing online learning platform, and they help to create lessons and revision quizzes. We then brought in great content partners like Teach for Malaysia, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Kindity, and MyReaders.
Ooh, let's learn more about action.
When the lockdown happened, we were really concerned about students' learning. So, working with YTL Foundation and our friends from Teach for Malaysia, we set ourselves the task to build out weekly content to cover the parts of the curriculum that students were meant to learn at the time.
We jumped at the opportunity to work together because we too didn't want learning to be disrupted for as long as schools were closed. We initially thought this would go on for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months.
Yes, but before we knew it, we covered the entire curriculum for English, math, and science for both primary and secondary schools.
That's insane! Who knew? But I must say, I really enjoyed being part of the content creation process, and so did our TFM fellows and alumni. It was the perfect opportunity to collaborate and create good content.
Well, exactly. We knew from the onset, didn't we, that students were going to be stuck at home and they were going to be so bored. So we knew that we needed to design these lessons to be engaging, creative, that would help them discover and explore new content while learning from home.
Yes, and we also made sure these lessons tied back to current issues. This made learning a lot more relevant.
Yes, and we were constantly asking ourselves, didn't we? How can we produce content that isn't just necessary, but provides the opportunity for us to educate beyond the scope of a subject?
That's right. Content that builds on awareness of global issues, that builds character, knowledge, and skills beyond the classroom.
One of the themes of an English Learn From Home lesson for 16-year-olds was on buying goods and services. We anchored this lesson on educating people about not hoarding or panic buying because a lot of that was happening due to the pandemic. And as supermarkets introduced special opening hours for the elderly, we also addressed the topic on how we can care for others and posed the question, how could we be more helpful to those in need at the time?
I appreciated how this gave us the opportunity to do something that was fun, different, and meaningful, you know. We really thought about how we could put ourselves in our students' shoes and understood that learning from home is a different experience than it is to learn in a classroom. And so we wondered, how could we leverage that difference?
Yes, you're right. These lessons were then designed so that students could easily do it at home on their own or with the help of parents and siblings, and everyone could have a fun time because we made sure that they got the chance to use all their senses in a lesson.
Yes, I especially liked that English lesson that we did on vacations. Students had to plan a vacation for their family, but since they couldn't go anywhere at that time, they had to plan a staycation instead. Students used items that they could find at home to create an environment that they would want to bring their families to. The beach or
camping in the park.
There's the rustling of leaves, a campfire to roast marshmallows on, and a good campfire song to sing to. Like a bit of the outdoors for a change.
Good thing I have this with me.
I believe lessons like this are able to hold the attention of students in a different way. Teachers still need to conduct lessons virtually, and this is a concept that can be tailored to their lessons.
Exactly. Even with learning from home, we need to recognize that teachers' responsibilities haven't changed. We apply non-traditional approaches to teaching and hold students' attention during the lesson, but perhaps now on a different platform. And there are just so many creative ways around it. With younger students, you could get them to practice their communication by doing a show and tell with their stuffed animals, and just being personal with the kids by using something they already have at home, which can't be done in a classroom.
Our global situation has presented us with many opportunities to make learning even more engaging. As we find ways to connect lessons to real life, we have the opportunity to empower students to practice self-awareness and recognize that they too can make a difference in small ways.
You got that right, Claudia. The sky's the limit.
So, let's recap. We've talked about how the current state of our world continuously presents uncertainties, disrupting our routines and changing how we understand each other and our place in our world. The effects of the pandemic on education have caused important conversations to surface, and now is the time to ensure that all we've learned is taken forward, so that post-pandemic, we won't go back to where we were before, but we will build back better.
So education needs to be relevant for the students of today, preparing them to thrive in today's ever-changing world by being globally competent and also being global citizens who can make a difference. This is where the OECD framework comes in.
We also looked at applying a different approach to education through the curriculum, the community, and by giving students the opportunity to meet people of different backgrounds.
Yes, remembering that students can be taught how to learn, not just what to learn.
Education like this requires support for teachers and parents so that they're equipped to handle the needs of students today. We've also seen how effective it is when parents and teachers have a good relationship.
And no matter what education looks like, today or tomorrow, whether from home or school or both, we can always find a way to make it engaging and to tie it back to real-world situations so students can learn to play an active role for change in their community and beyond.
A student who is prepared to thrive in today's world is one who isn't just globally competent, but one who can recognize that they are a global citizen. This means knowing that their actions do have an impact on our community and our world at large. They need to know that they have what it takes to lead in the chaos.
Education has such an influential role here, and we all have a part to play to make it happen. While sometimes it might feel overwhelming to make a difference, I think a good place to start is right where we are right now.
What if we took the time to include more real-world issues into our daily conversations?
What if we practiced empathy and kindness in the process?
Together, let's think of ways to prepare students to engage and thrive in today's changing world so that they can lead in the uncertainty and be empowered to make a difference. Take the lead.
Learn to learn and thrive in chaos. Celebrate the common ground. Plant a seed and